Yolan Trun, welcome to another exciting day in our galaxy. And today I'm talking about crews and not really talk about a crew because whenever I do a crew video, like silent enemy crews, like Armada crews, I always can show you the best crews that are out there. And then I get a lot of questions. If I don't have this officer, what do I do then? If I don't have these, what other combination can I do? And that's unanswerable because everybody at a certain point in the game has different officers, and so there is no chance to tell something different at this point. And I said this in a lot of videos, but that's why I decided on the case of the Armada crews, because a lot of players that are just getting started with it are always asking about crews. I decided to do something different. I will just give you a kind of a little general rule book for starting on Armadas and about the crewing that you should think about. And that's what I want to do with this video. Armadas, you will start at Ops level 23 when you build your Armada control center. And then you will want to think about what officers do I take there. And in general, you might want to have officers present that cause one of the states, that debuff the Armadas. We have hull breach, burning, and there are others that are reducing critical hit chances of the opposite. There are a lot of officers that take, not so many, but there are some that take something away from the Armada. And burning and hull breach is the easiest for beginners to think about. But it's important to know that you should talk to the players of your alliance, especially at this early point, who brings which officers. Because one debuff will only work once. So if you bring 5 Neros into the Armada, okay, in the beginning 3 Neros, let's stick with the small ones and the small Armada control centers, only one of them will work. So it's no use that all people bring a Nero with them. So you should communicate with the rest of the people who brings what. And then it really makes sense. If one brings an officer that causes burning on the Armada, if one officer on another ship is there that brings hull breach to the Armada, this combination of debuffs will be quite helpful. And the main rule for all Armadas is, before I get a little bit more into detail of the other stuff, is do not use PMC on Armadas. I've seen that many times happening. PMC is for a long time a great crew on hostiles, but it's a no crew for Armadas. Just for everyone who's getting started, never use PMC on Armadas. That is of absolutely no use. But I was talking about that officers that provide a debuff will be very helpful. And I mentioned already hull breach. I said hull breach is a thing for that when you get started. If you have any officer that causes hull breach on Armadas, then it will be helpful because it will increase the critical hit damage of the player ships. And I said ships, because if one has an officer that causes hull breach, the bonus from this will go to all the ships that are in the Armada. Even if only one player brings it, and that's why I also said it only makes use if one player brings a certain officer, it will bring this debuff for everyone. So when this happens, when your officer causes a hull breach, all the other players in that round will have a higher critical hit chance as well. This same is with burning. When burning is applied, it reduces the Armada hull health by 1%, for example. Then every round that burning is applied, there will be another % gone of the hull health of the Armada. So in general, if you do that for 100 rounds, the Armada has no hull without hitting it with anything else. So that is something else you should bring to an Armada in the very beginning. And once again, it only works once. So that's why I said 3 Neros are not very helpful here. That is why it's really important that at the early stages of Armadas that you coordinate with the other people from your alliance, because in the beginning Armadas are tough and you want to do as high Armadas as you can with the people that you have, and so really do some officer coordination there. And maybe other members of the alliance have different officers than you have, because getting officers is always a gamble, and so you can combine your strengths in the Armadas here. The loot in the end will be split, so to speak, and it's based on ship power. So if you do Armadas, make sure that in cases where you already have higher level players in your alliance, that they don't help with the biggest ship they have. Always only send the ship that's really needed. That's what I'm trying to do. Doesn't always work, because sometimes they call for help so late that you need to just go there with whatever ship you have in range. But I always try to take the lowest ship I can take from my collection that will still help defeat this Armada, but not be too powerful, because that would take the loot away from the other participants in the Armada, because the loot you get is based on your ship power that you have in the Armada. That's, for example, why it makes no sense, because I want to mention that even if it's not for people who just started the game, but I see that very often. It makes no sense to go into Xindi space and take part in an Armada with an NX-01. The NX-01 makes sense there if you are the starter, because then you get the starter chest. But if you get in there with an NX-01 while there are, 10 billion Borg cubes that are fighting those Xindis, and you jump in there with your NX-01, you will get close to no loot about that. So that's no use at all. That's why, for example, when we help people, of course, we will help lower level players all the time that want to start as in the Armada with their NX-01. Then we will bring in bigger ships to defeat that thing. But it's no use to wait for someone who just wants to participate. So you start an Armada and he says, oh, wait, I'm coming. With what? With NX-01? No, that makes no sense, because he doesn't get much anyway, and he's just wasting a lot of time with that. And so that also applies in the beginning already for the FKR Armada, so for the Federation, Klingon, and Romulan Armadas. Make sure if you want to help your alliance mates beat one of those, only take a ship that can beat it, but not a much bigger one. You would just take their loot away. That's an important thing to think about. And of course, if you have bring loot officers below deck, for example, if you have that, that can be very helpful. But earlier I talked about the buffs that you cause on the Armada, and that not everybody should bring those officers and no 3 Neros or 3 Belanas or whatever. It's a different thing with officers that buff your own ship, like morale from Kirk, from Harry Kim or whatever. Those need to be there for every player on every ship if you want to use that, because that only works on your own ship. So the debuffs for the Armada work on everyone, but the buffs for the ship only work on your own ship via the officers. So if you want to have morale, everybody has to bring Kirk, Harry Kim, whatever. So that doesn't work for the other players in the Armada. And of course there are some starter crews. What you can use, for example, very early is of course the Enterprise crew with Kirk, McCoy, Spock. Unless it's the Enterprise later on, then Spock is not needed anymore, because the Enterprise has that itself. But that's a crew that works, that people have very early usually. Of course, the Borg crew will help. If you have 5 of 11 with 7 of 11 and 8 of 11, this is a great crew for starting Armadas as well. I used that for a long time in the beginnings, before we had all those fancy new Armada crews, and I finally got them, and they got me through, and 5 of 11 also brought some more loot, so that was a good option for that. But I talked about this in my Armada crew videos as well. But those are good starters. And of course, the next generation crews are working already, and those are the ones you might have earlier than Chakotay or Cisco or whatever. And so that might work. Or you can use the Klingon crew with Gorken and for the hull breach, for example. There are a lot of options for this, but that's why I said I make this video with a kind of the general rule, to give you a hint what you can do if you don't have all those fancy Armada crews. And I hope I could help you a little bit with that. That was the only thing I could do without talking about 1 trillion officer combinations that people could have at certain stages. And I hope that you get a little clue of what's important on Armadas. If you want to add something, of course, please do this in the comments below the video and on Discord. And if you want to see another video right now, the next one is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.